Okay, so as mentioned, first thing to do in Premiere, just the quick review. Okay, so hitting play. We've got music, we've got video. Like right off the bat, I picked a different track for this one. This track is a little more exciting. If you listen to this beginning, doesn't match, right? There's something inherently wrong about the music and the motion. The motion starts before the music, and everybody, we've all seen enough TV, film, etc. to go, ugh, that sucks, right? So learning to edit, like learning to use your eyes on this should be very easy. Listen to your instincts. They're almost always going to be right, okay? So as soon as you see something like that, you've got to know, okay, this clip has to slide forward. I can expand this bar a little bit so I can get a better idea of the sound curve, right? And know that that really should be starting someplace right about here as the music crescendos into the beginning. And by the way, I use fake music terms all the time. I hope I get them right-ish. Don't hesitate to correct me when I get them super wrong. Okay, next, that comes in really harsh though. This would be called a hard cut, right? It goes from nothing, a blank screen, to that. That's a little bit rough. Again, it's a little bit harsh on your eye. It's even more so when you're in VR because, again, the screen is, like a ½ inch in front of your face. So we want to apply a transition to that. Again, just like thinking about our PowerPoint presentation, you don't have to be Star Wars. You do not have to be George Lucas and do a different transition for every major act, okay? Keep it simple. So 9 out of 10 transitions are probably going to be a cross dissolve for VR. When you're doing film or something like that, 1 out of 10 becomes cross dissolve, 9 out of 10 becomes a hard cut. We're just going to transition from one clip to the next. We've learned in VR that is really harsh though. So get used to using this cross dissolve. Okay. So now when I hit play, much more subtle, much more easy on the eyes. Okay. Next, I'm listening for the change in music. I'm listening for the music to give me a cue. And one of the ones I like is that little note change that happens in the repetition. Hear it? Okay. So that's someplace right around here. So again, so that I can note those things and find them quickly and easily, that is going to be markers. First, I'm making sure I have my audio selected, so it's got that white highlight around it. I'm making sure my shuttle is in the right location. Markers, add marker, because sometimes it's hard to pick those things up on your waveform. Okay, so I'm just going to slide this clip back. I'm going to slide this clip, my forest clip, over. And so this would be a hard cut between the two clips. Okay, it's not timed right, for sure. I could get in there and tweak that, or I can drop my cross dissolve between the two. It's still late, right? Did you guys see that? Hear it? Okay, so I'm just going to shift that forward a little bit again. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit on that location too. Zoom in, slide that forward, put the two clips together, put the cross dissolve between them, and let's check it again. Yeah, much better. Cool? Easy peasy, trusting my instincts. Okay, so all that stuff is working well for that entry sequence. I could keep doing it for each clip, but you guys don't want to watch that, okay? You should get it. Again, trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it's not. Because one thing that we have all done, Generation X and up, me, old people and up, we've consumed a crap ton of media, right? We have seen bad cuts and we have seen good cuts. You guys know this. Just know how to use the tools and don't be forgiving of yourself. Nope, that's not right. Fix it. Cool? Okay. So as this is coming together, the next thing that you really need to be thinking about is color correction. Okay? Color correction is one of those simple things to do. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it can make a really astounding difference, right? And so when we're doing color correction, it is a really similar mode of thinking of what you're going to do in Photoshop. The tools are similar, different names though. So I'm going to collapse this on my effects panel. The first thing that we can look at is Lumetri presets. Okay, these are like if you go into Photoshop and you just select something, let's add the watercolor filter, right? These are just default kind of settings. You don't really have a lot of opportunity to tweak what's here. But there are some really nice presets like monochrome. If I wanted to do a monochrome normal contrast, I can drag and drop that into my forest clip and boom, everything becomes black and white. Easy peasy, right? So as I scrub through this, everything's now black and white, drag and drop. If I select this clip and if I am on effects control here, so this is the effects control for this clip. If I scroll down, you will see Lumetri color. I can turn that off. That's the one I was playing with earlier. Let's delete it, right click, clear. That is my Lumetri color monochrome, off, on, off, on. Cool. So there's all these presets that you can play with. Let's clear that one. Cinematic 100 faded film, right? So that's like the film that's been in the archives for 10 years and everything's kind of gone sepia tones. So there's a lot of things that I can do based on what I'm trying to tell with my story. I can bump the color just like that. Did we watch the video on color? You haven't watched the video on color. We'll play that at the end of class if we have time, okay? But you can think about if you've watched a film that flashes back, a lot of times it'll go sepia tones, it'll go browns, right? Those are like really simple color tricks. You learn them in Foundations of Studio, right? First year, you're gonna have to go back to that mode of thinking and how we leverage color. So let's clear that. And let's go a little bit more towards doing it manually. I've spent a lot of time in my 3D engine getting this image to look the way that I want it to look. Now I just want to make it look 10% better, right? Because sometimes that matters. So, and this is what I did on this. Twinmotion, I was working through it, trying to get everything looking good. But now I have the opportunity to just push that a little bit further, okay? So I can go into my video effects and I might have to pull up my cheat sheet here in a second. Not video, utilities, no. Transform, no. Cheat sheet, yes. No, of course I didn't write it down. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to flip through these really quick. Oh, color correction, duh. That's why I didn't write it down, because it should be pretty obvious we're doing color correction. The tab is called color correction. Then we're going to go Lumetri color, okay? So I'm going to drag that again as an effect and put it onto the clip. If you notice, absolutely nothing happens, right? Because that's not a preset. Everything's coming in at zeros, okay? From here, if I scroll down, I've got some really simple things that I can see that I primarily use this basics tab. How many of you have used curves in Photoshop? Okay, curves is in here, bling, right here. So I can go in and do curves. Curves has never really been a thing with me, to be sure about it. I don't know, again, visual thinker, I struggle with curves a little bit. So I have a tendency to just use my sliders, but exposure, contrast, highlights, shadow, whites, blacks, temperature, tint, saturation. That's sort of my world. That's where I like to live. But there's one other really nice thing. I'm going to slide this over because, to be blunt about it, there are two things I often don't trust, and that's my eyes and ears. Okay, so there are times where I might not know exactly what's happening and I really want some kind of visual guide. And for a couple of reasons. First, as mentioned, I don't always trust my eyes. I've stared at that scene to get that tree and that framing right for about, I don't know how long that shot took me. I don't know, 10 hours to set up, 8 hours to set up, something like that in the grand picture of things. That wasn't that much time. But in my head, it looks pretty good. But I really shouldn't be trusting myself, okay? So let's do File, Save, just in case this crashes. Shouldn't crash, hope it won't crash. But I'm gonna do Window, and I'm gonna go down to Scopes. Okay, so your scope is a visual representation of what is exactly happening, something I can identify. So that's my scope right here. And I am gonna drag that over to this side. And so now I have effects and scopes, because what I want to be able to do is with that clip selected, and let's go back to effects controls. I want to be able to manipulate these and see its impact on the scope. So as I scrub through this, you can see that scope changing, and it's going to show me several things. This really strong line right here means there's a lot of whites and it's a lot of compression towards white. Here at the beginning, see how this is really pressed up high here? That means there's a lot of intensity, there's a lot of saturation of reds up at the top. And those are all things that I can balance out. This isn't, seeing these lines here is not really a good thing. Unless what I'm really going for is a lot of drama, trying to pull your eye to that location in the frame. A concentration here is not as good as average and balance for your typical shot, okay? So when I see those really harsh lines, that gives me an indication, right? And it happens again here, and then it starts to press really hard up at the top as the trees grow and all that red pushes vertically. Those are indicators that I don't have a really good balance to that image, okay? So I can come in and I can adjust my exposure, right? And see how that's pressing even higher? Or I can pull that exposure down just a little bit, probably not a lot. I can change my contrast. So I have a little better darks. So again, it's pushing that scope out a little bit. I can downplay my highlights just a pinch. I can work my shadows a little bit. Again, that's giving me a little better contrast here. And so I'm seeing it here, but I'm verifying what I'm seeing on my scope, that I'm making a positive change. I'm balancing things out a little bit. And I can also punch up my blacks just a little bit, pulling those things a little bit further in. So again, I'm washing things out. I'm pushing that contrast right down here a little bit more to kind of balance those things out. If I turn that off, on, off, on, off. Again, that is a 10% difference when you look at that frame change, but that frame there, much more balanced, much better image, okay? So let's look at that one more time. Off, on. As I scrub through, I might also want to be looking at, okay, does that work everywhere for me, right? It should work at the beginning, because again, the beginning was a really similar frame to the end. So in general, I'm happy with that change everywhere. Okay, I can go off on here. Again, that little extra pump of contrast makes all the difference to me in my eye. Cool, you guys with me? Simple little changes to do. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. If I need to change that throughout a shot, I can actually animate. I can turn these little stopwatches on and off. So at different points along the frame, I can create different values in any of those quantities. Cool? Okay, so let's do another save here. File, save. Okay, so the next thing that we need to cover is audio that you have created, okay? This is part of the project. You guys will be creating custom audio. I would rather you not use the AI voice readers. They're out there. I think YouTube has one even. Premiere, I think Premiere has one built into it. If not this one, the beta release has some things like that. Not so much, right? They have a tendency to do some weird things to your brain. So I would rather, even if you're not the best at reading, the honesty, authenticity of that is really nice. Okay? So use your own voice. If you just can't do it, if you're staring at your phone and you're staring at your script and you cannot read, because that is a thing for some people, then you can absolutely find a friend and do that. Okay? Won't hurt my feelings. But give it a shot for yourself. Give it a shot for yourself. Speaking of which, like I just said, the next version of Premiere actually has an cutter, which is really funny. It will do a dialogue analysis, and every time you it will find it, delete it, and smush the audio together. So I mean, where this is going is really cool. Okay. So that said, trust yourself. You'll do great. You will do great with these. Okay. And again, you're not building 45 minutes of dialogue. You're probably building 30 seconds of dialogue, which you'll want to do in 4 or 5 different passes. We have recording studios on campus. If you don't have something perfect to do this with, you can always talk to me. I can get you in one of those locations. So far, nobody's used them. Okay, so I don't really think you need to. The phone is a really amazing thing. Okay, so you're just going to have to kind of trust me on this, because I'm not going to try and get my phone matched to the screencast. But what you can do, and I understand, I do have like a really high quality mic that plugs into my lightning port that I use when I'm doing these things for a game or an experience. The quality is better, but it's not so much better that I'm going to have you guys check it out or something like that. The mics on your phone really are incredible. The key thing is finding a good spot to record. And one of the best places for you to record is going to be your car, which sounds weird. But if you think about a car, it is built, the interior of your car, most cars are built to deaden sound, because they don't want you to hear the of constantly driving on the road, the noise from the engine, all of that kind of stuff. The key thing, though, is you need to have your car, like if it is my car where I park next to Chestnut Expressway, not so good. It doesn't block the sound well enough to block out the sound of Chestnut Expressway. Right? So what I don't want you doing is like driving to some place at 11 o'clock at night to sit in your car by yourself in a parking lot and do this voice recording. Not good, not safe. Okay? So you don't have to do that. But like my recording in this space, this is going to sound weird because there's so much reverb in this room. What you're wanting to do is find a location. And again, the car works great because all the fabric, all the interiors is designed to deaden sound. So you'll only get your voice. If car doesn't work, find another location where it's not quite so lively like this room is, okay? Because this room's terrible for voice stuff. But what I'm going to do is put my glasses back on because I cannot see my phone without them. I'm just going to go to voice memo. And if you're an Android, I don't know what you have on Android, but it's got to have something similar, I would assume, right? So voice memo, and if you haven't used voice memo, it's like the best. It's super easy. It's like a one button thing. I hit record. Once I hit record, I start talking, yada, yada, yada. I hit stop. Once I hit record, I start talking. Easy peasy. Next, the thing that I do is I select that I started recording again. Let's delete that one. On your recording, you've got the 3 little dots. At least that's what iOS has. And you hit the share button. I send mine to myself via email because I email myself things all the time, which is weird, but it works. So from there, email. Let's hope nothing too weird, pops up in email. Didn't, yay. Okay, that's my recording. Download. Show in folder. Okay, so back to Premiere. That's the recording that I just built. I can drag and drop that directly into my bin. Cool, easy peasy. And that's it. My voice, my memo recorder records a WAV file, right? So importing in MP3, WAV, those things, your standard audio formats, pretty much everything's going to work. So from here, I'm just going to drag and drop that audio clip into its location, wherever it needs to be, timed with my video clip. And now if I scrub through that. Next, the thing that I do is I select that record. Okay, so let's zoom in on that. And again, looking at that waveform, I can pick up on the things that I accidentally do all the time. I'm going to mute this track, scrub this back, and listen. Next, the thing that I always take a deep breath and I always click before I start talking. I can't help it. I don't know why. So to get rid of those things, the easy thing to do, and I can see them right here on the waveform, I can see where I start to take a deep breath. I want my recording to start here. So I'm just going to slide that forward. I'm just dragging the beginning of that clip so it starts here. Hopefully that's about right. Next, the thing that I do. Cool. Easy peasy. Next, there are, like my voice, and you all know this, when you listen to your own voice back, it's super cringe. Just like, ugh, I've listened to myself because I do the screencasts and all that crap. I'm more used to it. I'm more tuned to the reality of how I actually sound, not how I think I sound. It's a great TED Talks on that exact topic, by the way. Go watch it sometime. It'll make you feel better about yourself. But I'm used to it, but there are still things. It's very tinny, and there's still some reverb and things in the background, and I would like it to sound more like this. That would be so cool if I would sound like Radio DJ Dave. So there are some really simple things that I can do, again, with effects and audio to crispen those things up. And again, I don't have time to teach you guys the art of doing that. We're not sound engineers here, so we're going to totally use the cheat codes. Okay, so if I go to audio effects, and we come down to special, there's a little one called vocal enhancer. This does the same thing that we're doing with our video clips. I drag and drop. It applies that effect to the entire clip. If I have that clip selected, I can see it right here. That's my effects, vocal enhancer. I can come down to individual parameters, mode, and as I'm playing through. Next, the thing that I do is I select that. Ooh, the reverb is really terrible. Okay, let's select that again. I really want to pull this more. I'm not singing, clearly. It's not about my high tones. I'd really like to sort of punch out the low tones, okay, and do that. And there are other things that I can do if I come in and do like noise reduction. This is more about adding delay and echo, unfortunately, but I can do a few things like de-reverb, and it's going to pick up on those second echoes, right? And hopefully those two things in combination should sound a little better. Next, the thing that I do is I select that record. Oh, I think I clipped it off too soon, but that's okay. So if I have this working with the music. Next, the thing that I do is I select. Okay, you guys hearing that? You can't really tell what I'm saying. You have to change how you listen and like, okay, I have to really lock in on the voiceover, the VO, to understand it over the music. So I need to bring the music down when it gets to the voiceover so that I don't have to concentrate. We have to do the things for our listeners to make their lives easier. TV does that all the time. Film does that all the time. I am positive you have seen something last year's Game of Thrones seasons. There was a lot of complaints, too dark, constantly too dark. Some movies intentionally like, well, I can't, it's hard to hear the dialogue, right? And sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes people have just screwed it up. Okay, you have to make it easier on your audience. Okay, so at some point prior to this voiceover, I need to drop the level of my score, and then after the voiceover, bring that back up. So if I bring my shuttle forward, I can select, again, that's my voiceover clip. This is my score clip. On my effects control for the score, I have levels. Okay, and this is exactly like turning a level up or down on your stereo. The only difference is, and it is on by default, that little clicky mark there means everything that I do is going to be animated. Okay, it creates a keyframe. So just by turning that off and on creates a keyframe from the beginning of the score to this point right here in space, which is also this point in space. I am not changing the volume. Just before it gets to my voiceover, I'm going to drop that just a bit, 10 decibels. Okay, when it gets to the end, next thing I do is I select that right about here. I'm going to set another keyframe, -10, enter. And if I zoom in on that area, you'll see it a little bit better. Okay, you can see keyframe 1, keyframe 2, it drops the sound down. Right about here, I want to bring that back up to 0. If I've got one of those moments where I really want the music to swell and be a little bit overwhelming, I can even scooch back a little bit further and say, let's push some gain onto that, +30. You can see this is called a rubber band, and sort of you can start to see, yeah, exactly, the impact of that volume change as well. So again, use those things with caution. And just like we had a lumetri scope for our visuals, you have your EQ, your equalizer right over here, which is going to help you understand sound. If your voice is splattering, like if I were to hold my phone, I almost used the name that starts with a K, that like if you're being that person walking through the grocery store, talking on your phone, right? That if you record that, no, I didn't say it. If you're that person and you're holding your phone here talking, you're going to see splatters. You're going to see the EQ max out. What you're doing to somebody's ears when you do that, especially in VR, you're going to make their ears bleed. Okay, same thing with the lumetri scope, things should even out. I should be seeing that EQ not peak, right? And you can see where I turn up the volume, it hits it right there. It's too much. Okay, especially too much when it's your own voice. If your voice is peaking out, re-record it. Hold it a little further away. There are post-production tools, again, in Premiere, where we can balance that out. But again, you're not reading for 2 hours, you're reading for 10 seconds, 3 different times. You're not gonna have a lot more voiceover work than that. Re-record it, okay? So those are your 2 things that you're always looking at. So let's go back to that keyframe. I'm just gonna lasso it and delete it, okay? So let's scrub this back, take a listen.
Next, the thing that I do is I select that record.
Okay, you can actually hear the change in volume. So the next thing, I'd probably spread that out a little bit more, make it just a little bit more subtle, right? Because subtlety is all, we don't want like those things to be obvious. And that's just what I'm trying to do. Cool, so that's got us color correction. That's got building our own audio. A little bit of review in Premiere. I think the last thing that I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording because I don't